Bemidji has a fascinating and unique history, in part because of the natural environment which facilitated industries such as logging, but also because of the ethnic diversity in the area. I'm going to focus on a few snapshots of the early history of the city of Bemidji, and as I mentioned, I'm going to take you on a whirlwind tour of the history in 6.5 minutes. Around 300 years ago, the Dakota people who lived around Lake Bemidji began to move westward as the Ojibwe came in from Michigan and Wisconsin. With the exception of missionaries and fur traders, Euro-Americans did not start to settle here until the late 1800s. When white settlers arrived at the lake known as Bemidjigamog by the Ojibwe people, they encountered an Indian settlement on the southern shore of the lake. Sheinauishkung, the man whom pioneers would come to call Chief Bemidji, lived in this village and was well respected as an elder and leader. In 1888, the Carson brothers arrived and set up a trading post, and in 1893, Marion Carson married Sheinauishkung's youngest daughter, Bagamashikwe. In the 1890s, homesteaders and timber cruisers began arriving. The first homesteader was Freeman Dowd, who settled at the northern end of Lake Bemidji. When Dowd's claim was purchased by the Bemidji Park Board in October 1919 to make way for the Diamond Point Park, the homestead cabin was removed from its original site. In fact, the Dowd cabin is still in existence today. The Beltrami County Historical Society, founded in 1952, was determined to preserve the cabin and use it for history events. The Dowd cabin was moved to the Beltrami County Fairgrounds and will undergo restoration this year during the fair. In 1895, a group of men from St. Paul and Fosston bought 93 acres of land on Lake Bemidji to establish a town site. They organized it and had it surveyed and platted. In 1896, the village of Bemidji was incorporated. In March that same year, the Bemidji Pioneer began publication as the county's first newspaper. In 1897, James J. Hill decided to build an extension of the Great Northern Railway from Fosston to Bemidji. The following year, the Brainerd and Minnesota Railway Company extended its rails from Walker. By 1910, there were 5 different railway companies transporting lumber, freight, and passengers to and from our city. The Great Northern Depot, built in 1912, was the last depot commissioned by empire builder James J. Hill. Home of the Beltrami County History Center, the depot sits on the still active Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway and is on the National Register of Historic Places. The timber industry was the original impetus for the railroads to link to Bemidji. Beginning in the 1870s, lumber barons began buying up timber in the area. Thomas Barlow Walker, who owned the Red River Lumber Company of Crookston, had claim to almost half of the county's timber. The first sawmill was started by John Steidle in 1895 on the eastern bank of the Mississippi. In 1903, Thomas Shevlin and Frank Hickston built the Crookston Lumber Company sawmill on the southeast end of the lake. The Crookston sawmill ran 24 hours a day in the summer, with 450 mill workers processing 40 million board feet of lumber the first year. While mill work was done primarily in the summer, logging was carried out during the winter. In 1900, the population of the village of Bemidji was 2,000. 5 years later, it was chartered as a city. The same year, Warfield Electric built a power dam on the Mississippi River. When the plant opened in 1909, it brought power to the 14 wood processing factories and the city of Bemidji. One of the earliest schools was District No. 7 Schoolhouse, located on America Avenue between 4th and 5th Street, with Cora Omich as the first teacher. The school for District No. 4 was on the east shore of Lake Irving. By 1898, there were a total of 13 school districts in the Bemidji area. In 1904, the Ladies Public Library Association proposed a library at the courthouse. In 1908, funding was requested from Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie wrote back that if the city provided a site and made provisions for maintenance, he would fund construction. True to his word, he provided $12,000, and in 1980, the building was placed on the National Register. The village town hall was constructed in 1899 with offices, a fire hall and jail, and an opera house. The Bemidji String Orchestra was hired for the 1904 season to furnish music for every entertainment and consisted of a guitarist, a mandolin player, and a violinist. In 1897, the city drugstore opened, followed by Barker's Drugstore in 1900. Both buildings rented rooms to physicians and dentists and advertised patent medicine cure-alls, such as Matt J. Johnson's Great Blood and Rheumatism Cure 6088, which cures all kinds of rheumatism and blood trouble and puts your blood in shape. One of the early residents in Bemidji was Charles Scrutcheon, a well-respected criminal defense attorney who moved to Bemidji in 1898 and set up a law practice. He had been born to former slaves in Richmond, Virginia, and graduated from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, with a master's degree in law degree. He was actually from the University of Michigan. I'm from Michigan State. Another one-time resident was Dr. Mary Gosley, who graduated from medical school at the University of Minnesota in 1909. She took an active role in promoting women's rights and was a founding member of the Bemidji Area League of Women Voters. She went on to serve as the director of the Lake Julia Tuberculosis Sanatorium in Pulaski for 24 years. Another one of our well-known residents is the mythical giant lumberjack, Paul Bunyan. Bemidji's Paul and his ox Babe were built in 1936 and unveiled at the January 1937 Winter Carnival. The carnival was a huge success, aided in part by the assistance of 13 civilian Conservation Corps units in the area. Paul was built on a scale of 3-to-1, based on the 6-foot height of the mayor of Bemidji at the time, Earl Buckland. Babe was also built on a scale of 3-to-1, modeled after the largest ox at the Headwaters Lumber Camp. Babe was put on a truck and driven down to the 1937 St. Paul Winter Carnival with the exhaust pipe hooked up to his nose and taillights for his eyes. On a final note, I'd like to add that I think one of the neatest things about Bemidji is the lake itself. This lake is what gives our city its name, serving as the draw for so many people to settle here, and providing sustenance and recreation. In a land of 10,000 lakes, Bemidji is the one we call home.